Welcome to A Writer's Diary. I'm Cara Brookins, and this is page 1. Now, this diary is not intended to be a how-to manual or even a step-by-step process of how you should write your novel. In fact, this is not even going to be the process that I follow to write every one of my novels. This is just a look at the process of how one author writes one particular novel. I'll be chatting about some of the difficulties and questions I have along the way, and really just treating this as a discussion point where I discuss where I am in my current novel. Every novel will have some unique elements that require the author to do things a little bit differently than they may have done in the last novel. A novel that has a lot of technical details or medical details may require some extra research, or you may be dealing with a novel that is very character-centered and you'll have to do a lot more character development than the last novel. Or sometimes just a world building. If you're creating a new world or exploring a setting that you're not extremely familiar with, you'll have to spend a little bit more time with your world building in the novel. Now, these are the types of properties that really stretch a writer, and this is where we really learn the craft of writing, and it's really the fun part, and why so many writers write lots of different types of novels rather than staying in the same genre. We like to mix it up a bit. Now, the novel that I'm currently working on, and it's one I've just started, the working title is Rise, so at least for the purpose of these videos, I'm going to continue to call it Rise so that we'll all know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the unique characteristic of this novel, for me, is that it's based on a true story. And in this case, it's not just based on a true story, it's based on my true story. A true story about my children and I building our own house. Now, even though most of the events in this story actually took place, I've changed things in time and space a bit, and I've changed some of the characters, and actually combined a lot of people into one person and that sort of thing. So that's why this becomes a fictionalized account, even though the actual events are based on real events. It is a psychological thriller. So you have a general idea of what my concept is here. This is a story about my kids and I building a house. It is a psychological thriller. And the concept, once I have just that basic idea for a book, I followed the same process with this book that I have with all of my novels to date. And that's once I have the concept, I start a file on my computer and I start taking notes. And I call this my outline, although it would be completely unrecognizable as an outline to any educator. It is really just a rambling brain dump of everything that I can think of that I might want to put in this novel. And I generally do it single-spaced. There are not complete sentences. And sometimes there are pictures and locations. I can add news articles to it. And I just keep dumping for a couple of weeks into this file everything that I can think of. I've learned that one of my favorite places to collect these notes is on a long car ride. There's something about the focus of that long drive. If I'm by myself, I can turn on a voice recorder and just start talking. And my notes on my voice recorder, as well as the computer outline that I'm making, are very unstructured, and in fact, it's very much a conversation with myself. I'll say things like, oh, maybe this person will go and do this, and then I'll immediately contradict myself and say, oh, no, that won't work at all. Maybe instead they'll do this. Oh, yes, that's exactly right. And I'll just continue through that process of having this conversation with myself until I have it worked out. And once I have all of this written down, and if I do have it in voice notes, I will transcribe it so that I have everything typed out into a single document. And one of the things that I don't do is I don't delete any of it. Even the parts that say, oh, no, I don't want to do that, maybe I'll do this instead. I leave that in there because it's like it's a part of the process that my mind went through in order to create this initial concept. And later on, when I'm writing, when I kind of get stuck and I'm not sure really what I was thinking or where my mind was going when I came up with this part of the novel, I can go back and look at my notes, and there's something about kind of re-following that same path that will put me in the same creative space that I was in when I first had the concept. And not only will it revive some of that energy, that momentum that I had early on, but it will kind of remind me what I may have been thinking and take me down into those same neural pathways where those ideas came from so that I can continue on the proper path and maybe find some new ideas. But once I have this done, and I have, like I said, usually it's about 3 pages is kind of my point of I feel like I have enough information to begin this novel. Then I try to track down who the protagonist is and what voice they will be in. It's really important to me to feel like I know that protagonist as well as the antagonist. Then I write what is called a voice sample, and probably nobody else on the planet calls it this, but I call it my voice sample. I'll sit down and I'll write a single page. It's lots of times not even a full page, but I do it single spaced, and it's the protagonist's voice. Usually it's in first person, even if I don't intend to write the novel in first person, because what I'm trying to decide is this a strong enough character? And do I want to hang out with them for the next 6 months or a year while I write the novel? Will a reader want to hang out with them for several hours of their lives? And really, since you're putting this in your body of work, do you want to spend time with this character in some way for the rest of your writing career? So this is kind of my test. I write that voice sample. I almost always love it right after I write it. So the important thing is then to put it away, and I'll continue thinking about the novel, but I don't just jump right in and write it at that point. I let that sit for a couple of days at least, sometimes a week, if I can hold myself back from writing the novel. There's almost always some other kind of writing work to do, whether it's promotions or editing or something else I can stick my creative energy into. And once I feel like that has sat long enough, now and then I'll share it with a person, but it has to be someone that you can trust with your creative energy, somebody who knows what this is. This is not a piece to be edited. It really doesn't need a lot of critiquing. You just need to know, is this the right voice for the character, and is this an appealing voice for a reader? Now, this voice sample rarely makes it into my novel. A lot of times it's a scene or part of a scene that will make it into the novel, but the voice sample itself is rarely used. So once I have that done, if I really am comfortable with it and I'm ready to charge forward with this novel, then I start writing. And I jump right in with action in the first scene. It should always just drop you in some action and hopefully a lot of emotion. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I do on those first couple of pages in the next installment on page 2. But the important thing is, now you're writing. And just to review, we talked about 4 basic steps that, at least for me, are an important part of my writing process. First, you have to identify the unique characteristic of whatever novel you're currently writing. And this gives you a really good direction to focus on and lets you know where you're going to be stretched as a writer. In my case, with the novel Rise, the unique characteristic is that it's a true story. And second, you want to get a really clear concept of the entire plot. Now, this doesn't mean you have to know exactly where you're starting in every chapter and know exactly how everything is ending, but you have to have a really clear concept of all of the characters the setting, everything that will be in the novel, and make some sort of an outline. It can be a formal outline or a very loose outline that puts all of this information together in one place, and keep a really careful record of it so you don't have to go hunting about in lots of different folders and places for it later on. I use Evernote and Dropbox both so that I'll have copies of all of my notes on any device. And once you have this concept, then do some sort of a voice sample. Try out this protagonist voice. Make sure there's somebody you like and you want to hang out with before you jump into the novel. Let that voice sample rest, and then finally start writing. And that's what we'll be talking about in page 2 when we actually start writing the first parts of the novel. I'm only a few pages into this novel, so I'm kind of writing this as I speak, and that's what is making this a real diary and a lot of fun. You can find out more about the novels that I have already written and published on my website at www.CaraBrookins.com. You can follow me on Twitter at CMBrookins. And of course, you can find my books on Amazon. I look forward to seeing you on page 2.